Safety Committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yeah.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Ornowitz.
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Howard.
She's excused,
Howard.
is excused.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Present.
Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
5 present, you have quorum.
So first we get we need the approval of the minutes from the Tuesday, September 24th meeting. Anybody?
I move to approve the minutes from the September 24th meeting as written.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Ornowitz.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Chairman Vaccaro.
Aye.
It's 5 aye votes.
Okay, up on the agenda is Board Bill 116, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro.
And I believe I have a committee sub in front of us. If we could put that in front of us.
Say again?
Committee sub. 116
You have a
committee
committee
sub.
sub?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be in front of everybody, I hope.
I move to place Board Bill 116 committee sub before the committee for discussion.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any objections to previous roll?
No.
No objection to previous roll. Board Bill 116 committee substitute is before the committee.
So the changes, and they're pretty simple. In the original, well, the changes will allow the chief to actually negotiate. There's no memorandum in front of us. What we're voting on is to actually going to allow the chief to make the decisions. They're simple decisions. A lot of it has to do with the city, county, how they're going to cooperate, how the radios are going to work. So I don't know that we need this brought in front of us for every little thing. This gives the chief of police the opportunity to negotiate. They're going to add 16 more police to the MetroLink. And this will also give the county police the authority to write tickets for city court, which they don't have now. And I do have, Lou, and I have people from the city council if we got questions, but we've done this before. It just adds an additional 16 more, and it also gives the chief the opportunity to negotiate on behalf of the city as far as the MetroLink and the county go. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but to me, it seemed pretty simple, but, you know, I'm certainly open to any questions.
Okay. I'll go down the committee and see if it's time. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? Okay. Alderman Ornowitz, you have any questions for Alderman Vaccaro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill authorizes the commissioner to negotiate and add 16 city police officers to the MetroLink?
No, it's county. So what's happening is, right now, I believe the city has 9 officers riding MetroLink, and the county has 24, and I could be wrong on those numbers. This adds an additional 16 county officers to the MetroLink, so they're on there riding through the city. Right now, if they add them, they can write a felony, but they can't write city ordinances. This will allow them to write city ordinances, and the reason to let him negotiate all this is because they are still in negotiations. That's why there's not a memorandum of understanding in front of us. This will allow him to, there's a lot of little things like, it's not going to cost the city anything. My understanding is they're just doing it, but they also need to know, how do we communicate? How do we all get on the same radios? It's how we're going to make the MetroLink safer. And that's really what this does.
Okay, question answered.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Howard. How am I saying? Alderwoman Boyd.
This is just for MetroLink.
It's just MetroLink. It does not expand their authority beyond MetroLink.
Okay, all right.
And it makes it safer, with the shootings on the platforms and the things that are going on. We especially, we're going into of course, we won't get this past that quick, but with the Cardinals, and hopefully we're in the World Series, we want to make sure everybody's safe and happy on the MetroLink, that people come in from the county, city, and all over.
So they're getting 16 officers.
There'll be 16 additional officers over what they already have now. And they're going to come from the county.
Oh, okay, so
And the county's paying for them.
for the officers.
The county's paying for the officers, yes.
Okay, all right, no more questions.
Okay, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
No questions.
Well, thank you.
Anyone signed up to speak on this bill?
I don't think so. I brought speakers in case I had to have them.
Okay, I do want to ask Judge Edwards if he would come up.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. I certainly think this is a great opportunity, but it struck me as an opportunity also to maybe work with other municipalities that are, we split the county like Jennings or Wellston or Pine Line. Do you see an opportunity for us to do something like that? Because I know in my ward, right there at Holdemont, Martin Luther King, we have some of those issues. People play those games where they jump from Wellston over to the city and do their dirt or whatever, and there's nothing they can do about it but try to call, 5th District. Have we explored or thought about how we can cooperate with adjoining municipalities to do something similar to this?
We have not had any discussions with any of those municipalities or the North County Consortium, as you well know. We've not had any discussions with respect to partnering with those municipalities. We do it as a practical matter at this time. If issues are occurring across jurisdictional lines, the officers are comfortable coming into the city of St. Louis. Our St. Louis city officers are comfortable, especially if there's a pursuit of assisting in St. Louis County, but we've not reached a point that we believe that it is necessary to have an ordinance.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I have to have the mic to ask it. But wouldn't, given the chief the opportunity to negotiate and not keep coming back here, would he have that opportunity to negotiate with some of these other? I realize that this gives them authority, we're giving the county authority to write tickets in the city, but would that also allow the chief to negotiate to see if we can get more done?
Well, I think a lot of these negotiations are done orally and without in writing. This is significant because it allows St. Louis County officers to write tickets for ordinance violations. They have the authority to do it at the state level anyway. They have the right to arrest on a felony or a misdemeanor, but not on an ordinance violation. So this is a very narrow question that we're proposing here. But I agree with Alderman Vaccaro that there is an opportunity, and I agree with you, there's an opportunity to have these discussions, but we have not at this point.
Okay, the other question I have, are there any other situations where the police commissioner enters into his or her own contract with any entity?
Yeah, we have major case squad types of agreements. We have agreements with task force. And so, yes, we have all of our task force officers are by agreement, whether they're ATF task force, DEA task force, FBI task force, major case squad types of things. So this is not unusual.
I mean, as far as the police commissioner negotiating and signing off on the contract?
Yes, the police commissioner signs off on most of these.
All right, I have no further questions.
Thank you.
You want to close, Alderman?
No, I think it's a simple bill. I mean, there's also an amount of trust that we're going to have to trust that, but I have to believe the chief is going to negotiate in our best interest. And I would just ask that we pass this out with the do pass recommendation.
You want to make that a motion?
I will make a motion that we pass this out with the do pass Board Bill 116 committee substitute out with the do pass recommendation.
I second.
I would
So it's
ask
been
previous
moved and
roll.
second, no objection to previous roll. Board Bill 116 committee substitute comes out of committee with due pass recommendation.
Now we got
Okay. So now,
You can stay there if you want.
no, go ahead.
I can fit anywhere.
Go ahead.
All the microphones are the same. Thank you for sharing that for me. So we have, hey Cedric, C#, if you want to come up and explain, I invited Cedric to come in and talk about protests that, and he also has a presentation he wants to make. And some of the stuff I saw, and it seems unusual the way we're doing stuff, but I know we had the homeless people up. But in order for me to get a better understanding, and I know some other people live in areas that are, you know, have a lot more issues. But in order for me to have a better understanding, I really like to hear from everybody. So, Cedric, if you want to present, now there's no votes or anything, but he is going to explain what he feels, and he brought some people to do a little presentation, and I'd already asked him that I want to be out by noon, so have at it.
Heard that, huh?
Well, I thought you knew.
How's everybody doing?
Take your time.
Good, good.
We have all day.
She said we have all day. Take your time.
Okay. Well, my name is Cedric C. Redmond. I'm the youth ambassador for the city of St. Louis. And this summer we had a tragic summer that happened to a lot of our youth pertaining to the gun violence that you see happening in the city of St. Louis. As youth ambassador, I lost 24 kids on my watch. And I feel like that there was something more that I could have been doing. There's a place that I should have been. There's something that I could have said that ultimately probably could have saved some of those lives. But, you know, I know one way to really strike a change is through protests. And we've seen that in the past couple years. And except what does the change actually look like? What is the end game? What does it look like? So I wanted to make sure that when we design protests that we designed a message that called for community accountability, to let them know that, hey, you know, we can come up with laws and stuff like that all day long, but until you accept the role that you need to take and the initiative that you need to take in your community, that's the way that we're going to end up making things safer. But, you know, the police need help. The police need help. I wanted to make sure that Protest That came up with a message that supported first responders and police officers, because at the end of the day, you cannot have a community if you do not have law enforcement and if you do not have EMS and EMT. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't excluding anybody when you talk about the circumference of a community, right? So we made sure that, you know, initially I wanted to make Protest That a African American initiative. I felt like our community should have been standing up, marching the streets, you know, causing all of the attention towards the issues. But when I heard that there were police officers who are white men and white women that hold our dying kids as EMS arrives, when I heard that there are firefighters who are white men and white women who are traumatized when they have to see these children who are shot, even surgeons, doctors, caregivers, when they have to perform and they have to try to resuscitate our children that's been shot and killed, you know. It's a community thing. And even though another race may not talk about it, you know, it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect them. So we wanted to make sure that Protest That went into the community. And we challenged the community to, you know, to raise its own awareness, to get familiar with each other, to accept responsibility for things that you may not feel like are, you know, your responsibility, and ultimately take your community back. Take your community back. So with that, we organized 4 different actions. You know, we were on John and 20th Street in the 3rd Ward. We were on Wabata and Hamilton in 22nd Ward. We were on Vanderbilt and Evans, which I believe is the 4th Ward. And we were also on Greer and Marcus, which is the 4th Ward. And just challenging the community to come out and hear this message of encouragement, hear this message of healing, and ultimately try to get some people to change their individual minds about what they can do to contribute to the solving of the problem that is gun violence. So I do want to say congratulations, because you've got a chance to pass cure violence, and that's a big step in the right direction. But for me, I'm still thinking about the 24 murders. And the fact of the matter is that this city has a hard time solving murders. And people are vanishing and disappearing off of this city for the simple fact that killers are still walking around, and we're burying babies and innocent women and children and young men. So with this protest, I wanted to make sure that we brought a solution. You know, you all made time for the other protests, and you all made time to sit down and hear what they had to say. But unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of solution-based thinking or any propositions brought to the table. Everything that was said was, well, something needs to change. Well, with this protest, it brought some divine intervention. And I've got a friend of mine, and his name is Ross McNutt. He's coming with a technology that I believe answers a lot of the questions between the police and the community, and it can help us get down to our biggest issue, which is solving murders. We need to find a way to solve murders better. And I want to give him an opportunity to show you all this and let him explain it as in-depth as he possibly can. But for the simple fact is, you know, we protested the fact that 24 children, and some of those that we don't know about, that didn't get reported, that didn't get acknowledged. So 24 asterisks mark, 24 children too many. And we shouldn't have to come up with $1 million to get people to come forward. We shouldn't have to, you know, persuade people with money to come forward, you know, especially if we know that, you know, that's not really the culture that it is around here. We got to find a more creative way to nab these first, second, third time offenders, you know, in the bud. So I'm glad that this protest produced a possible solution, and I wanted to bring it in front of public safety because ultimately that's where it lies. So I want to give my man Ross McNutt the floor and give him an opportunity to present to you all the community support program.
Cedric, hang on one sec. Does anyone on the committee have questions for Cedric?
You didn't come to my room.
Really?
We know your heart.
Right on.
You're a good guy.
But I do have some key points that I think can help solve a lot of the political issues that we deal with, a lot of the questions that people may ask or answer. I mean, and I think it answers both the police's cry and it answers both the community cry. And, you know, once he gets a chance to show you this, I'm going to break down some of those bullet points for you.
I think I was told I should talk from here because it'll pick up on the microphone. Is that right? I appreciate the opportunity. My name's Ross McNutt. My background is I've got 20 years in the U.S. Air Force and a PhD from MIT in a program called Technology Management and Policy that's aimed at bringing technological solutions to difficult social problems. And what we have here is a program that is offered to the city of St. Louis at no cost for 3 years. And then after that, the question is whether or not the donor would be willing to continue on. So this is a solution, a system that helps solve major crimes, murders and shootings within a city, and provides the information necessary to not only solve those crimes, but also to deter those crimes, which is the major objective. This program, I'm going to go through, it's been used in a number of different cities in a not as public way as we'd like. And what we're looking for is the ability to come into a city that has some high crime rates and be able to help reduce their crime rates and solve some of those shootings and murders, and more importantly, to deter people from committing them in the first place. So I'm going to go over a little bit, I know you guys don't need to see too much of this, but St. Louis is the #1 murder city in the world, or in the United States. And 66 murders per 100,000 puts you almost 20% over Baltimore, which is the next highest. And Cedric did a great job talking about the kids, but it's a lot of folks. That kid growing up in North St. Louis has had 39 people murdered and 407 people assaulted within 1 mile of him in the last 6 months. And I don't know what that does to the psyche of a kid growing up, but I think I'd have a hard time with it. You look at the economic cost of crime on the St. Louis City, and this is just the cost of crime per crime is determined by the Department of Justice times the number of crimes as reported to the FBI, and it comes out to be $2.4 billion a year is the economic impact of major crimes on the city of St. Louis. Our goal is to reduce that by 20 to 30% in the first year. Even if we're only able to reduce it by 10%, that's the equivalent of $240 million of economic impact on the city. The cost of crime per person, roughly $7,000, $7,800 for every man, woman, and child in the city per year, which is more than most people pay in rent. And again, that's just to tee up what the issues are, and we use that to sort of get the community groups that we meet with focused on what the real problem is. Our goal and objective is to solve, but more importantly, to deter crime from occurring. And I'll show you how we do that in a second. Again, our goal is to reduce or deter 20 to 30% of that major crime within a city, and that represents in the city of St. Louis 40 to 60 people not being murdered if we're able to achieve those 20 to 30%. How do we reduce crime? The way we reduce crime is we solve otherwise unsolvable crimes. That's the key part of it. By doing that, we're able to remove those repeat offenders earlier in their criminal career. We want to stop them after they shoot their first person, not after they shoot their 8th or 9th person, because that way we can save those other folks. But more importantly, our goal is to deter the people by having them know how we solve the crime, seeing how we solve the crime, so that they know that if they commit crime within this area, they're going to get caught. This is the sort of person that we want to stop earlier. I'd rather stop him after he robs his first store before he shoots his first person, not after he's wanted for 12 murders. Again, in St. Louis, one of the major problems we run into is the case closure rate and the conviction rate. Right now, we're down around 30% in the city of St. Louis. And every criminal out there thinks they're better than average, so it's not much of a deterrence because they think that they're not going to get caught. And again, deterring saves two different people. It saves both the victim and their families the grief, but also the shooter and their families grief. And that's why deterring a crime is 10 times more valuable than actually having to solve it. And that's why when you see this system, you'll know why the communities want us to brief every single high school kid as a way of quickly spreading it across the community that it's there, so that people are deterred from doing it, because you can't be deterred if you don't know that the system exists or how it works. Again, our goal is 20 to 30%, 40 to 60% murders not occurring next year if we're able to come. Accountability, one of the other aspects the community really wants us to stress, is not only do we help solve crime, but we also provide an unbiased witness to police activities, that we can provide photographic images that shows what occurred at a scene. We can use that to validate an officer's statement of what occurred. We can also use it to validate an officer's sworn statement that they may have used to get a search warrant months before. And we've done that in the past and actually had the search warrants, the cases dismissed because the officers weren't accurate on their actual sworn statements used to get search warrants. So there's a lot of things that we can do there, but again, we also support defense attorneys and public defenders. You're probably asking, now, how the heck do we do all this? Well, we provide something called wide area motion imagery of a city. Basically what we do is we provide a Google Earth-like image of the city every second at resolutions we can just barely see a person coming and going from a murder scene. And we do this using aircraft that orbit the city at 6,000 to 10,000 feet for 6 to 8 hours at a time, sometimes 1 to 2 missions a day. And by doing that, we're able to zoom in anywhere within that city to the location of a reported crime and watch these dots run away from the crime scene, typically jump into a car and race away. And we follow that car forward in time to the house that they go to and backwards in time to the house that they come from. We also track them past every city camera that they pass, and we know the exact second that they're within those images. And I'll give you an example of a case, but we provide everything associated with this. We don't need any equipment, we don't need any personnel. We actually hire most of our personnel locally, train up our analysts here, and those analysts typically leave us and go to the defense analyst jobs. In Dayton, it's the Air and Space Intelligence Center. Here in St. Louis, it would be jobs. There's thousands of jobs that do this at the National Geospatial Agency. They can't get those jobs unless they have experience. They can't get the experience unless they have the jobs. We become a pipeline for those jobs. I'm going to show you a little bit about what this system looks like, if I can see it from here. It
I
could.
mean,
but-
there's lights and switches in the corner. I think if you do that, they'll turn off.
So this is Baltimore, Maryland. We cover a 5.8 by 5.8 mile area, 32 square miles.
Might be pretty dark. Yeah, probably.
And anywhere within that whole area,
I think that, we could see it pretty good, though.
yeah. So anywhere within this area, we can stop, we can back cars up, we can go forward. And what that allows us to do is, again, go to the scene of a reported crime and follow people as they come and go from the crime scene. I can't see who a person is. They're a single pixel. So all I'm really doing, to be honest with you, is mostly following their shadows as they run away, go away from a scene. Let me see which one I want to show you here. You got the same one up twice. I was going to see if I could find a person in here to show you what they look like, but sometimes it's hard to find a person. So that's the best resolution we get. And if I had more, right, that looks like a person right there. But I can't tell who they are. Again, I can't tell what color they are. Mainly I know that they were at the scene of a shooting. They're either a suspect or a potential witness. And my goal is to figure out where they came from and where they went to and feed that information to detectives. And we put together a full investigation brief that says here's exactly what happened at this crime scene, where the people came from and where they went to. These circles here, they represent the police security cameras, and we can tell you exactly what second that the people passed those cameras. So no longer do you have to search through 850 cameras to figure out which one may have the car that you're interested in. You can go to a specific camera at a specific second and say, this is the car that I'm interested in. And often we've actually tracked them past 75 ground cameras before and after a major crime with the final address, with the beginning address, and any place that they've stopped before or afterwards. So I was going to show you a very quick couple of things. This is actually this is the second murder in the first hour of the first full day of operations down in Juarez, Mexico. You have 3 cars here just finishing up their last pre-murder meeting. And we actually had the execution of a female police officer just prior to this. And this one, the only information we started with was man found in an alleyway, shot, no witnesses. So here you have a protection car in the green, the shooter in the orange down here, the getaway car in red, and another protection car in yellow. And you may think this is elaborate, but in Baltimore we see actually coordinated driving between multiple vehicles And a lot of people don't think that the criminal networks are that sophisticated. The answer is they are. We just don't know it. So this purple car here stumbles into the middle of the murder, isn't involved in it, and he's actually might be a good witness. Right here, this is actually your shooter right there. Back that up just a bit. There's your victim right there. Right there appears to be the shot. Your shooter is going to run off, pass the first car, jump in the passenger side of the second car and drive off. And here's all of our no witnesses who come running out towards the victim and then run down the alleyway after the shooter. So we're looking for that sort of change in behavior that says something happened there. It turns out that these guys are armed, otherwise they don't run after people. And it actually is a protection unit for a major drug delivery that we identified occurring here a few minutes later. I can see them. I'm going to have to walk over here and see which one I have. We then want to essentially see if we can follow We're going to follow the car that the shooter got into. You can see the yellow car is also involved, passing on the right, passing on the left, wrong side of the road, runs the red light. The red car runs the red light because after you shoot somebody, the traffic laws don't tend to apply to you. What our analysts do that we hire locally is track the person. Right here, the analyst noticed that someone got out of the car. That little dot right there, it gets out of the car, walks right into the second house there. This is the other vehicle up here from the same shooting. You can see that dot right there runs right into that notch. So here we are 3 minutes after the murder. Again, the only thing we had was man found in an alleyway, shot, no witnesses. Now what we're going to do is see if we can identify those houses. We're looking for the second one from the corner. There's the house on the corner. There's the second one. I can take a screenshot of that and send it to an officer's cell phone. We have at times caught up to people live and had them pulled over as they fled crime scenes. So we get cued from a 911 call or a shot spotter detection, and we're able to go to the scene, back up time, watch the events occur, figure out where the people came from and went to. Here's that notch. We couldn't tell if the suspect ran into this house or this door. But again, given that the only thing we had was man found in an alleyway, shot, no witnesses, that's a fairly good start. We continue to track these people, and we're actually able to see where they came 45 minutes prior to the murder, 3.5 hours after the murder. We're actually able to identify the 4 vehicles that are directly involved, the 12 locations they come to and go from, every time they had a car-to-car meeting beforehand. And in this case, we're actually able to identify 2 cartel headquarters, a major drug delivery, the person who paid for the murder and coordinated the murder. And again, that's there. I'll show you a little bit simpler of a case here in just a second. But we had to follow these guys to a second murder before we were able to go in and actually have them arrested. They used our information in the interrogation, and everyone confessed. So this is an example of just a shooting in Baltimore. Man found a block and a half away from the shooting scene. His only comment to police was, "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of it." We were able to identify 2 vehicles driving in formation, about 200 yards apart. Made 3 stops on the way to the shooting. We're at the shooting location for an hour. Left the shooting location, came back. The shooting occurred, and they drove all the way back down to this location down here, where we had them in the ground cameras all along the way. We also were able to identify all the other vehicles at the scene. We were also able to, I don't want to say exonerate, but clear a person who the police thought might have been a suspect because they had a GPS tag on him, and he was within a few blocks of the location but we were able to conclusively say that no, he was not involved, because we could watch and see the car that he was in. We also tie in with the computer-aided dispatch, the city watch ground cameras, the police cameras, the GPS tracking systems. We also tie into bus cameras, which augments the number of city cameras that might be available. And we can also tie in with the gunshot detection system that speeds our ability to get to the location of a gunshot very quickly. Gunshot detection systems detect the gunshot within a few seconds, but then they often take about a minute to validate it. And in that minute, in the 39 murders I've witnessed, the shooter is almost a mile away. Meaning, even if the officers could respond instantaneous, the shooter is going to be a long way away. And in this case, we're able to back up time, watch the shooting occur, and follow the people both directions, forward and backwards in time, from the shooting location. A lot of times people give themselves away because, to be honest with you, they drive around the block 3 times before they jump out of the car and shoot somebody. And then they drive off running red lights and stop lights as they flee the scene to the house that they go to. We tie in with the ground-based cameras. These are just, each car that we track from the crime scene gets what's called a track report, and that's the basis of our investigation. Here's just the number of ground cameras that suspect passed as he went to and came from the shooting scene. And here are just some of the images that we're able to go into. So we make those ground cameras, we believe, 100 times more effective, because we can follow someone from a shooting scene nowhere near one of those ground cameras, past a ground camera, and sometimes it's 2 miles away. But we can definitively say he's in that ground camera at that time, pull up the picture, and then often we have him parked at a location, and we send the officers by to get the license plate number and other things. In St. Louis, in 7 days, we had 151 violent crimes, 355 property crimes. You look at that. The donor has offered up to 3 aircraft to support the system, to support the evaluation of the program over a 3-year period. That would cover 90%, 95% of St. Louis City. If you look at the murders, essentially you do need to cover a large part of the city. We have lots of privacy protections and other stuff. This is just an example of an assault on a police officer. I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. There's the track of a motorcycle going around a city. These 2 young men were on 21 stoplights. On the 21st one, they ran into the side of a police officer. She gets out to help them. They beat the crud out of her, jumped back on a motorcycle, and drove off. Well, this is the house they started at. Here's the first camera that we have pictured, an hour. Here they are getting on the motorcycle an hour before the incident. It's a little hard to see there, but that's the path they took to their first stop. This is the location of their first stop. Here's the path from that stop. They go all the way around the city, and bingo, right here they impact the police officer. Here's some of the ground cameras that we were able to capture from the city. This is the actual assault here. Your motorcycle is here. Your police officer is here. These stopped cars tell us that it's a red light. The motorcycle goes through the red light, impacts the police officer. Post-impact is where they stopped. 46 seconds later, the bike gets up and runs and drives off, and the officer is left there injured. This is the view from the officer's view. You can see that she couldn't see that the bike was coming from that side. Here's all the witnesses identified, and we're able to track them to see if we can identify who they are, to have them provide a statement outside of a crime scene. And then here's where the 2 individuals on the motorcycle went. And here they are actually getting off the bike in one of the City Watch cameras less than 15 minutes after the incident. Here's the last witness we identified, watching them just before they made that last turn. 2 hours, we had the officers at the location, and they found the kid sitting on a bike. Both of them pled guilty, and then they got 20 years with all but 5 of them suspended. So here are just some of the pictures that we're able to grab from the City Watch cameras, just showing the ability to pull up the images. Again, Baltimore has 800 and some cameras, but we're able to get 75 images from the various ground cameras as they drove around the city. Here they are passing the police department headquarters downtown. Here they are actually stopping to ask about a shooting that we were also investigating in the same day. And from all that, we were able to identify them, arrest them, and have them plead guilty. So we pull information from 911 calls and ShotSpotter information. We limit ourselves to shootings and murders. We can expand that depending on the willingness of the community. Some communities have asked us to include kidnappings and rapes and also illegal dumping, just because it's a nuisance. And we actually have the capability of helping with that. We also can support ongoing investigations, but those would likely require a warrant, but that's really up to the cities and the memorandum of understanding that we would sign with the city that details very explicitly what we can look at, what we can't look at, and under what procedures we can look at. The Bill 94 that you guys are looking at, we have no problem with that. We believe there should be a very strict policy as to what it can be used for. We have built in all sorts of privacy programs and other things into it. In Baltimore, in the 3-month period that we were there, we flew the equivalent of 13 days worth of flying. In those 13 days, we had 21,000 calls for service. We actually completed 108 investigation briefs, including 5 murders and 18 shootings, including 2 officer-involved shootings. And in one of those officer-involved shootings, there was strange things that occurred, and 2 of the officers have been arrested as part of the gun trace task force, which is actually a good thing. But we're able to provide detailed briefings on most of these cases with starting and ending points of the people that were involved in it. The detectives that we would brief, we'd always ask them, what do you have to begin with? And they said they don't got nothing. So the detectives would go by the shooting scene, gather the information they could, go by the City Watch camera program, get the information they could, then they'd come to us, and we'd go through a 100-slide briefing, and their response is, man, in 25 years on the force, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You've helped me solve this murder. And that's really where we get our, that's where we keep our motivation, is by solving those murders and shootings, we hopefully save 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 other people who won't be shot. And the one frustration we had in the program in Baltimore is they didn't let the public know about it. And because they didn't let the public know about it, we couldn't deter the kid from doing it in the first place, which means we didn't get 2/3 of the advantage that we really wanted, which was the ability to deter the people from committing the crimes. In those cases, we had 537 tracks and 44 final locations of the vehicles from the shootings. These are sort of how our analyst stations work. We actually we'll hire 20 to 30 analysts from the community. We'll train them up. This basic skill set we need is the ability to play first-person shooter video games. We hire them from the community. We teach them our software. We teach them PowerPoint, Word, communication skills, small group dynamics, the investigative process, basically all those skills you need to be successful in most jobs. And then as soon as we work with the Department of Defense to get them security clearances, as soon as we get them security clearances, they leave our $10 to $15 to $20 an hour job for the $50, $60 an hour jobs that are available at NGA, National Air and Space Intelligence Center, and NSA, which is fine by us. Why? Because I'm going to reach back into the community and hire more. And we become a pipeline for those programs. We have a program in Dayton where we get them their security clearances. We have a program set up in Baltimore with NSA where they get their security clearances. I'm pretty sure we could set that up here with NGA because you guys have several thousand people doing the same sort of work in this area. Again, primarily we do real-time analysis at the scene, as soon as we're notified, we'll go to the location and see if we can track the cars that are fleeing the scene, try to catch up to them and have them pulled over. We also go back and basically continue on the analysis till when the detectives can come see us, and then we give them a dump on everything that we have found up to that point. And in large cases where we're working on IEDs in Iraq, we'll go back and watch locations for the previous week, try to identify the whole network. We've never had to do that in the law enforcement world. just because, to be honest with you, we're often so overwhelmed with the number of shootings that we can't keep up. We don't have time to go back and do that level 3 analysis, but that would be very helpful in a major drug investigation, but that's not what we're proposing for here. The workforce, again, will probably hire about 20 local analysts and other things. And again, we reach into the community. We'll work with Cedric and others to identify good sources of people. We limit the use to what is agreed to. So you guys would have to tell us what crimes we're allowed to look at. And that goes into a memorandum of understanding that details exactly what we're allowed to look at, what the information's allowed to be used for. However, it's also allowed to be used to watch police officers' activities. And we have an independent oversight group that, our privacy program, we spent a lot of time building our privacy programs. I've walked right into the national headquarters of the ACLU and said, I want to show you everything we do. And they allowed me to do it. After they climbed down off the walls, they gave me a lot of really good input. And we incorporated that into our privacy programs to the point where they actually invited us to come speak to their privacy conference. Best attended session at their national privacy conference. And what we do is we limit the resolution to 1 pixel per person so that I can't tell who you are. The only reason I know you're not a bush is you run along the sidewalk. The only reason I know you're not a dog is you tend to jump into a car and drive. And when you flee a crime scene, you tend to drive crazy. If my cameras got better, I would rather cover, say my cameras got 10 times better, instead of having 10 pixels on a person, which I still couldn't tell anything about you, I'd rather watch 10 times the area and solve 10 times the amount of crime at 1 pixel per person. Every place my analyst has ever looked is recorded and stamped and reviewable. We have tools that allow outside oversight organizations to see everywhere our analysts have ever looked. Every track we make, which is the basis of our investigation, is recorded and has to be associated with a major investigation. Those investigations and all the tracks are reviewable, and if there's one hanging out way off the side, the question will be why. And that's all reviewable by those outside organizations. So those are some of the things that we do. Funding required, it's about $1.6 to $2.5 million per year, depending on the number of airplanes and the number of analysts we have. The donor has offered to pay for this for 3 years. He's offered to pay for all of our services and all of our equipment and everything else. He's offered to pay for additional police officers to work with the data that we provide. He's offered to pay for an outside oversight organization that will provide the community the understanding of what this group is doing. And he's also insists that we pay an outside evaluation team to provide the detailed assessment on the case-by-case basis level, but also on the community-wide basis to measure the deterrent effect and the impact. The reason he's willing to do this is he's funded hundreds of these types of programs, and they told me that out of everything they've ever funded, they believe that this program stands the best chance to help the most people out of anything that he's ever done. And he's funded thousands of efforts. And that's the John and Laura Arnold Foundation. And they're very well known. They're out of Texas, but that foundation funds these sorts of things. They've done no cash bail. They've done eyeglasses for school kids and measured the impact on that. So that's about, I'm almost done.
Who was the donor?
What's that?
Who's the donor?
John and Laura Arnold from the Arnold Foundation.
And where are they located?
They're out of Texas, but they heard about us on a program called Radio Lab, Eye in the Sky. NPR did a feature on us. They heard about it, and we've been communicating, and he's offered to fund a city to do a very public demonstration and evaluation. He believes that we're going to have much more impact than this, because when you watch people's response to how we go about solving murders, this one lady came to one of our demonstrations. The very next one, she brought her boyfriend. Her boyfriend sat there with his arms crossed, shaking his head the whole time. And at the end, I said, "Sir, what do you think?" And he just looks up and says, "Man, I'm not doing nothing." And I said, "Man, that's the right answer." My goal is not to put anyone in jail. My goal is to get people not to do the crime in the first place. And if I can drop, my goal, to be honest with you, is to make St. Louis not be the murder capital of the United States. My goal is to bend that murder rate curve so much that the mayor is the mayor of the year, the police commissioner is the police commissioner of the year, that St. Louis is seen as a turnaround city, and the jobs and the investment and other things start coming in instead of going out. Could you imagine if you dropped the murder rate by a third and the house prices stopped being depressed because of the high murder rate? As soon as the house prices start going up, people start investing in their houses again. That brings on the carpenters, the painters, the roofers, the plumbers to fix up the house as opposed to walking away from it. And those are the jobs that are augmented by a reduction in crime within a city. So what do we need? Basically, all we need is permission. We need access to the computer-aided dispatch where the 911 calls come in, and most likely the shot spotter information so that we know where to look. And that's really all we're looking for. We expect this to take a little while as we communicate with the community. We had a great focus meeting a couple of weeks ago, and out of that focus group meeting, a whole lot of people said, we need this. Cedric actually saw all that there, and he thought, I'll let him speak about that. Any questions on it?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Anybody on the committee have questions? Sure. Yeah, so we'll start.
First of all, this is pretty incredible. And
Hope you mean that in incredible in a good way and not incredible in a...
incredible in a good way.
Okay.
Yes. Wondering, so have you had conversations with the mayor and the police commissioner, public safety director?
To be honest with you, I believe the public safety director was at our focus group meeting the other day. We've not really had a chance to talk with him. He came in and left before we had much of a chance. We've not briefed the mayor. We are at the starting process of this.
Okay.
What we often do, we were asked to come in by the community. They put together a focus group meeting where we brief them. And to be honest with you, we were fairly early in this process, but part of it is, what would we have to do? We believe that being very open and public is absolutely essential to everything we do. It was picked up by some of the news media a few months ago that we were coming out for this meeting, but we're not, it will be a long process.
Have you been met with resistance in any other city that you've attempted to offer this solution?
Baltimore was supposed to be a very public process, and Baltimore Police Department decided at the last minute that they didn't want to make it public, and they wanted to see if it worked first. The problem was within the first day or two, we already had several shootings, and they got behind the power curve of announcing it. We pushed them very hard to make the announcements and get the word out because we knew it would be a disaster when it did come out. And
what are the perceived downside to this program?
The ACLU will dramatically oppose it. And what we found is it takes 2 or 3 protesters often to get a city to be squeamish about accepting it.
And is that because the concern about Big Brother has eyes on you?
That is one of the concerns.
Yeah, and that frustrates me to no end because the community that I represent, most people are afraid to tell, and they want cameras. Now, of course, there's a different section of our city where, yeah, they will protest and say they don't want cameras, but when you have grandmothers that are afraid to sit on their porch, and young mothers are afraid to let their children go outside and just play in the front yard, that's troubling, and that's a problem. And I don't care if people have concerns about eyes on you, because until the public has the courage to stand up, we need somebody to have eyes, and I thoroughly 110% support cameras because it is a deterrent. Now, it's not absolute because when you're when you're emotional about something, and when Pookie wants to kill Tay-Tay, it's going to happen. There's almost nothing you can stop unless you absolutely know that is going to happen and you have some intervention, somebody that can interrupt that. But at the end of the day, you can have a police officer on every corner, and if a person wants to kill somebody, it's probably going to happen. But I think we have to raise the conscience level of people to know that somebody is watching. When I grew up, we had neighbors watching, so we didn't do stuff because the neighbor would tell. And the neighbor would probably chastise you too, and then when your parents came home, you got worse. And we don't have that anymore because people are afraid of this new generation that we have. And so I think this is an incredible opportunity for the city, and I hope that we can get some movement on it. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. And again, the snitches get stitches is pretty widely shared. We do not require as much on witnesses, but we do identify where witnesses came from and went to so that you can approach them, not at the crime scene saying, did anyone see anything, but you can go to their house and say, hey, we believe you might have been there. I may not need you to testify, but can you tell me who this person is? Or who did you see at this location? It makes it an easier ask than, again, standing there at a crime scene saying who saw anything in front of everybody.
Absolutely. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Mr. Sharp, thank you for bringing this presentation to us. And I see this as another added arm for the cure violence. Because as we have found out from the safety committee, the cure violence is not one organization. It's several organizations that's going to have to work together to help resolve the issues within the city. And contrary to what people believe, it's not only North St. Louis that's having these issues. And so my heart goes out to the babies that have been crossfired in this craziness. But when we have a city that has 156 murders, that's sending a big message to me. And it seems like we have a lot of agencies that are coming to us from other cities to come help us. So I appreciate that. But I guess my question, because I heard the gentleman say that, and I liked it, was you all had a meeting. And so how did you get the information out about the meeting? And who was invited? Let's do it that way.
I was just invited to it by email, and I just kind of showed up. I was told to bring some guests, and one of the guests that I have with me is Miss Bria Dorsey, whose son, R.J. Dorsey, was one of the 24 children who was shot and killed this year. So she accompanied me, and we went and go check this thing out. And then once I saw it, I was just like, well, I just tried to apply myself. And I said, you know, I think I know the right things to do. I think I know the right people to bring it in front of. And, you know, for me, honestly, like I said, congratulations to Cure Violence, but, you know, I'm trying to solve murders.
And that's what I see as cure violence. That's how it's going to have to work. It can't be one organization take the lead on this whole thing. It has to be organizations, as I said before, coming together. And so that's what I was trying to figure out. So who called the meeting? Where did the information come from? That's what I was trying to figure out.
Can you come, sorry, to the microphone, because everyone can't hear you. Thank you.
What happened was Del Moeller, doctor from the area, heard about us on Radiolab and actually reached out to us and asked how he might be able to bring us to St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
And our answer was, well, the first step is to put together a focus group of community leaders to see if this would be acceptable to the community.
Okay.
And so he pulled together about 30, 35 people from various parts of the community. Reverend Witherspoon was there, Reverend Burton was there, Judge Edwards.
I mean, that's fine, and I think that was a question across the table. We were just curious on how this was pulled together, and that's fine because I do see the cure violence is not just a police issue, it's a health issue also. So I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem. I was just curious. Because St. Louis has a lot of meetings that nobody knows about. And then they come up with the solutions that nobody knows about. And so that's why I was asking. So I agree with this. I think this is good because to me it's like you're going to support the police and help them to address some of the issues that we have, which is solving murders.
Solving a murder.
Right. And so the process on the jobs, how are you getting the information? Are you all going to have like town hall meetings or, you know, how are you going to go about to get the community involved? Because I heard Baltimore, whose name keeps coming up in everybody's presentation. And so I heard they didn't want the community involvement. And so how would you all do it?
What we've done, so that was an initial test period, and they were supposed to go out to the community and bring it up. In the last 2 years, we've held 61 community meetings in Baltimore where we briefed wide stretches of the community. The community wants it, the political leadership hasn't made a decision yet.
Okay,
And again, the donor is willing to fund a city, and actually Dell was hoping that we would come to St. Louis and do that. I believe, it's a question of timing, but I do believe the donor would fund 2 cities if need be. But again, my company, we're building the systems out. It might take us a little bit longer.
okay,
We are looking for a city to do this in a very, very public way. And again, I want to bring the world to a city that we're operating to show the impact that we've had on that city. And, St. Louis, to be honest with you, St. Louis and Baltimore are 1 and 2 in the United States.
okay.
And
We
And-
can,
And so, I think this program will be good. It'll be another, like I said in the beginning, it's another arm for cure violence. So I think it would benefit us as a city.
you did ask how we would get the word out. We're hoping that in each police district or each ward, that we would be able to hold community meetings
Okay.
and present this. Once we're on our way here, we want to brief every single high school kid as a way of quickly spreading it across the entire community that the program will be here.
Okay.
Because that's the best way to increase the deterrence effect.
Okay. And if you could, when you all do this, I suggested not just look at high school.
Yeah.
You need to look at elementary and middle school, because they start as early as 10 years old. Okay, thank you.
I was just also going to say, like Jeffrey had another meeting. Why you see certain guys having to leave is because our meetings get scheduled on top of each other.
Understand?
And we can always do a public safety meeting out in any neighborhood if anybody in this group says,
And
hey,
that'd be fine, yeah.
we can do that.
I just think we really need to promote it in the community. And I guess my only issue, and you might not know the answer, a lot of murders, are they connected with drugs, or are they just personal?
We don't know. Not to answer that.
Often there are drug underlying things, but
Okay.
there's also ones that if someone is shot, the rival group feels the need to retaliate. But what we understand from those groups is that if you're able to arrest someone quickly, they feel that justice may be being done. There might be less internal desire, need to retaliate.
Okay,
So we actually hope to be able to cut down on the retaliatory killings by making it very public that someone has been arrested for the shooting that occurred yesterday.
okay. And I think that's the frustration of the community.
Yeah. One other question that often comes up is, can we operate at night? Mostly, we're bringing in a daytime system. About 2/3 of the major crime occurs during the day. We do have nighttime capabilities, but that's not what we're proposing right now. However, once we get up and operating, we could talk about bringing that capability in, and I believe the donor would also fund that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
I had a couple of questions. And, well, first, I thought about the same thing Alderman Boyd thought about with going younger. Maybe not elementary, even if we go to, and we know some of our babies elementary, but at least middle school, 7th grade, 8th grade, some of those ages. I think it's a great program. It looks amazing. The presentation was amazing. But I just had a question about facilitation, like who facilitates the program? And then could this program work without the circuit attorney and the police chief on board with it? Where would the information go? Like you said, the Baltimore police pulled back.
We do need someone to be able to present the information to. So the biggest thing, we can find out from the newspaper where the shootings occurred. But the real-time aspects, the ability to catch up with them live, the people to follow up on the leads is really what you need. We're not often solving it, but we are saying that he came from this house and went back to this house. Often they'll pull up the database of that address, find a person who's got a warrant from that address, they pull up the mugshot, it matches the mugshot from the store where the robbery and the shooting occurs, and that's how they make that case. So we provide information to investigators, also to prosecutors, also to defense attorneys. And again, we do support the defense attorneys, and sometimes we clear people who otherwise might be under suspicion.
I know you said that Judge Edwards, Public Safety Director Edwards was at the focus group meeting. Was Chief Hayden there, or was anybody he was just representing the police? Okay. And I was Googling stuff while I was listening to the presentation, so again, no, I was just made a couple of notes. I think the focus groups will be good. I think the public piece is going to be good. I would be curious to know why the police did not want to make it public.
I think they believed that it would be controversial. Now, once it came out, according to the local polls, there was a 91% approval rating of it. But the news media was much more focused not on what we did and what we achieved, but solely on the fact that the police department hadn't told people beforehand.
Okay.
And sometimes, if you can go back and read the emails that they got from a Freedom of Information Act, and you can see where we pushed very hard to be very public about it. Again, 2/3 of what we hope to do is deter crime, and you can't deter it if everyone doesn't know about it.
Right. Right, that's what I'm thinking. So I don't know how successful it would be. So is there anyone here from the Arnold Foundation? No. Okay. And you said the Arnold Foundation has not fully funded Baltimore yet. Would they be choosing between the two, or how many years into the program is Baltimore?
Well, Baltimore did a 1 month and then a 2-month follow-up, and they've been waiting to do the 3-year effort for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So they're in that process of deciding. And again, when the local folks from here asked us to come out, we checked with the Arnold Foundation. They said they would be happy to support St. Louis.
Okay.
So
So in the meeting that we would have, where we would pull the different political leadership and the different entities together, which I do feel like the Circuit Attorney's Office should be represented and the Police Department should be represented, will anyone from the Arnold Foundation?
Mr. Arnold himself might come down for that sort of thing if that helped. And again, what he's doing is, he heard about our program on Radio Lab on NPR, and he called up and said, how can I help? And essentially we said, we need a full-up public evaluation of the program, and he basically said he'd be happy to fund it. And that's when he told us that out of everything that he's ever funded, he thinks our system has the best impact for impacting the lives of the most people.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll kind of echo what Alderwoman Boyd said. What are the next steps? Like, what are the next steps for us to try to get that public meeting going, and then, like Chairman Vaccaro said, the public meetings going, so that we can try to move forward with the program.
I guess, just doing what we can to collaborate, with you. Maybe if you have a venue in your ward, or if there's a neighborhood meeting, that a significant topic is going to be talked about, where you're expecting a large number of people, we can probably, bring the presentation, a little slideshow of it, somewhere like there. But the biggest thing for me was bringing it to the Public Safety Board. That was the biggest thing for me, because to be honest with you, we're dealing with something that needs to be dealt with right away. And I just feel like the more people that we try to acknowledge and that we try to get involved, you know what I'm saying, we can be dropping the ball on something, and then the narrative would change, and it wouldn't be about 24 kids being killed anymore. It'd be about something else, and we would lose the intensity. So, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Ferguson, when St. Louis was at the cusp of really transforming the world's social justice and transforming the world's police and community relationships. And, there was a lot of things that we did not do. And there's a lot of cities that took advantage of our hardship, and they bettered themselves. And we're still looking for ways, to solve some of these issues. And I just felt like that this right here was our biggest one, solving the murders. And as far as I'm concerned, we all know what elements of crime are. We've studied that, and we say, okay, well, crime is a effect of this, and it's an effect of this. Well, murder, okay, that's where we are. We're trying to help solve murder, right? And also, provide more evidence so the police can get convictions. There are people that, when they lock them up and, you try to put them on trial, the police don't have enough evidence, so they don't get convicted. You end up putting the person right back on the street. Like Mr. McNutt said, it helps eliminate some material witnesses. It lets people know, like, hey, we can stand for you in court and testify on your behalf. It also allows our police officers to be proactive instead of reactive. Instead of sending 20 cars to a scene, we could be sending 20 cars to where something is headed or to where it ended up. It also answers the community's outcry for no more police officers. It just does. The people don't want to see more police in the street, but they want the police to do their job. So we have to get some type of medium that allows the police to do their job a little bit more effectively. Arrest rates, I think, would help with recruiting. If people saw the police department, really bringing people in and getting suspects and getting a face for every name that's been a victim out there, I think that might inspire people to be a part of the police force again, the recruiting process. It'll also influence businesses to update their private security cameras. So no more dummy cameras, no more just bulbs hanging from your ceiling, and you're not surveillancing anything, and you're not capturing anything. Now you might make that investment as a business to participate in something like this, knowing that you could, have vital information to help solve a crime. And then finally, just promote a deterrent, to the community so they know, like, there is a higher possibility, there's a higher probability now that I can get caught committing a murder or committing a shooting in the city of St. Louis with something like this implemented. But I know we got like 5 more minutes, and I brought a friend of mine. I respect time. I brought a friend of mine. He is the chairman of Homeland Security for the state of Missouri, my friend, State Representative Ron Hicks.
Good morning.
Good afternoon now, I think, or we're close to it. I know I heard the 12 thing too, but I'm okay with that. I know how meetings go. I'm State Representative Ron Hicks. I represent District 102, which is in St. Charles County. Yes, I'm on the other side of the river, but I'm not one that wants to ignore what's going on this side of the river. I was elected for my second time. I served in 2013, 14, 15, and 16, and then stepped away to come home to fix my marriage. And then I was asked to come back. I was elected again, and this is my first year back in office. I have 2 more terms I can finish. I actually served with someone's mom. But the reason I'm here today is not just because a friend of mine asked me what I thought about something and has been actually contacting me for months now on issues that's happening down here. Well, I'm done ignoring it. He said 24 children have been killed. That's enough. I have 2. I don't want to lose one of mine. There's a lady here that's lost one of hers. And I think it's enough. We see a system right now that's brought forth. I don't care how much money it costs. I'm going to ask this man to come give it to the state too. He's going to sit in one of my committee hearings. I'm going to ask him to come do it in one of my committee hearings. I chair the Special Committee on Homeland Security, and the Speaker of the House put my trust into this. And you know what? I might be an elected official in the 102nd District, but when he made me chairman of the Special Committee for Homeland Security of the state of Missouri, that brings me here. Mm-hmm. He knew that. Alderman over here from the 22nd Ward, you had mentioned something about, and I liked what you said too, about how you said you don't care if people know that they're being watched anymore. Well, that's one of the things I like about this man's system. You're not being watched. Did you see one single face on there? Could you identify one person on that video? Mm-hmm. No. We're watching pixels, we're not watching people. Those people are turned into pixels. We're not going into their privacy. We're not looking in their windows, and we're not watching them while they're doing whatever they're doing on the street. They're only being watched once a crime is committed. And that's something I want you to look for, to think about when he was saying that, okay? He's not watching what's going on, right? Really all they're doing is listening. They're listening with a camera. But as soon as the call comes in and their database center gets the call, that's when they start watching. And it's already happened. So who's spying on who? No one's spying on anybody. And I know that might sound, if anyone in here, and I know a few of the reporters know me, that might sound a little odd coming from me. I'm a Second Amendment fan. I love our firearms. I love our right to be able to protect our families. This young man, when he called me, the first thing he said to me was, I need your help with something. And I said, what is that? And he goes, well, first off, I want to tell you it's not about making a new law. He said, because people are already breaking the laws that we have. He said, so I want you to try to help me figure out a way that we can prosecute the people that are breaking the laws we already have. Well, I didn't have to help him. He's helping me. This young man brought something to me that I'm going to bring to the state capitol. And I hope you guys, I heard someone mention about, has it been to the mayor or anybody like that? And he started at a level here because that's where he's from. You are his friends and his people. He may not have relationships with the mayor. I mean, I'm a state representative and I know her about this much. She has been helpful to me in a few cases and some things. But starting here, I think what he's doing really here is he's giving you guys the opportunity to take this a little further too. And I hope you will. I saw when you guys were looking at what was going on here, I saw the expressions on your face. There was nothing phony back here. And believe me, I've sat in enough committee meetings where I see people phony back there. Not paying attention, not listening, not caring on what's being said. Every one of you's eyes perked up. So I know every one of you care about your community and about these children's lives that are being lost. It's not just about those children's lives, it's about crime in general. We're talking about solving murders. And when he said that to me on the phone, that's when I said, I'll come to your meeting. I wasn't even planning on speaking today, to tell you the truth. I just told him about 5 minutes ago, you know what, I'd like to say something. I was coming to listen more so because I wanted to see how you guys reacted to what's going on because, of course, in the position that I'm in, I hear a lot of bad things and good things. You know, I hear they don't care, I hear they care, I hear they're closing their eyes to it or they look the other way or whatever. You're not doing that. This young man's not doing that, that man's not doing it, and neither is, I think I heard Arnold Foundation is not doing that, and they're not even residing here in Missouri. I like that they want to hire Missouri individuals. They answered one of my questions. I wanted to know if it was just going to be one, and we're going to do this and that and get one employee, but no, I saw 21 employees, so I greatly appreciate that as well. I think if we can keep it here in Missouri, because it's Missouri's crime, it's not Illinois', maybe some is coming over here, but I think as soon as they see that we have a system or something like this, then criminals might think twice. Someone mentioned about grandma allowing their children to play in the front yard. The honest truth. It's sad. It's scary. He made a comment to me the other day. Cedric said, you know, it's not even that they know what they're shooting at. It's they're missing their target and they're hitting the innocent. Well, this is a good way I think we can put a good stop to it or put a major dent and put a curve in the crime here. We do not want St. Louis to be number one.
Right.
We're looked upon across the state. I was originally born in the state of California, and I hate saying that because I love Missouri. And every time I do, people always go, oh, California. But you know what? I'm here. This is where I live now. This is where I stay. This is the community I protect. I've seen what goes on in that state. I'm not worried about that other state. I'm worried about this one. We are number one in crime right now. I want to see us drop. I want to see us down in the bottom. Programs like this, I do believe, will help. And honestly, when I heard the overall cost on the end, I was shocked. I thought it was going to be in the millions. And I think it was 1.6. Well, that's why I want him to bring this to the State House. I'm pretty sure we throw $1.6 million away all the time in the budget. And I'm not blaming our budget chairman. He's good at what they do. But I know that there is wasteful money, and I think if we could even tighten our belts here in this city, find maybe a few dollars here and there, find some there, we might be able to bring this thing more to a state level and not just a city thing. Because St. Louis and Kansas City is Missouri.
Right.
And I know it'll work here just like it'll help work in Kansas City. And no one even brought up Kansas City, but I will, because I want to watch out for our major communities here in this state. So again, I want to thank you guys, especially thank you for bringing this young man up forward and giving him the time to go find someone to do something like this. You're putting our young minds to work, and they're figuring out solutions to help solve the problems in our communities. Because let's face it, some of us in the State House aren't doing it, and you're having to deal with problems right here at home, and it's being ignored other places. So thank you. Thanks for giving him the time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I speak a lot, and I think I will stop since it's 12.
You did good.
Very
Is
much.
the
I do have
doctor
cards
here?
on me
Is
if
the
any of you would like to
doctor here?
contact my office.
I would.
And I know that I really need to excuse Alderman Boyd
Yeah.
because he actually went out and held his meeting off a little bit longer, but
I can
I don't know how
close.
much longer
I
you
can
have to stay, but
close right now.
We're getting ready to ramp it up.
Yeah, I can close right
Okay,
now.
cool. I didn't know if you had more people. I'm willing to stay for a bit, but
No, but
thank you.
as youth ambassador for the city of St. Louis, I lost 24 kids this year. And, this protest was designed to bring a solution-based project to the city on what can help us solve these murders. And I believe that if we would have had a device like this in the sky, we could have solved 23 unsolvable murders that happened to our children this year. So I'm trying to bring this as something that I believe that will help. I've talked to people across the state. I've talked to people, across the region and the country, about coming to St. Louis because y'all know I love this place. And there's nothing more than I want to be able to do to have my child grow up here. So I appreciate y'all, for having us and taking us in. And like I said, the one thing we're really asking for is just permission to get the emergency response calls and the shot spotter information, so then that way we can start saving some lives.
Well, and I'll let anybody follow up. I just want to say from myself, thank you. And I know we've met, and I know we're friends.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that protest that, and I'm pretty sure you're the organizer, actually has a goal. It isn't just protest and figure it out.
Yeah.
It's protest that and we have a solution. I'm going to open it to everyone else and then we'll close at that.
All right.
I'm just going to say, thank you for your energy, your tenacity, your passion to want to see St. Louis turn around. The 22nd Ward was a benefactor of your protest movement at Wildwood and Hamilton, and it was my pleasure to participate with you in that. You got a lot of energy, a lot of passion, man. St. Louis really needs more brothers like you to step up to the plate and help us make a difference in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Boyd. Alderman Boyd.
Cedric,
Yes.
thank you so much for being compassionate and determined, because you continuously keep pushing. You don't let anybody deter you. So I appreciate what you're doing. My heart goes out to the mom for her loss, and my heart goes out to all of the moms, because being a mom, I cannot even begin to relate to losing a child. And so I'm excited about this because I feel that we can begin to start bringing closure to families. And I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
We need to get these families to have closure to move on.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Alderwoman Boyd.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you as well, Cedric. I also attended the protest that movements, the protest, and what I tell you all the time is what I liked about yours was its consistency. The same time, every Saturday in September, it could go on. As far as I'm concerned, I think we need to keep it in the forefront of people's mind. My heart goes out to you, sis, again, as a mother of 5, like Alderman Boyd said. I can't imagine, but again, the Cure Violence program is not a policing program, and this is more of a tool for the policing program, which will not make things 100% better, but it'll bring closure. So I agree with us using every tool we can in a toolbox to make this city better. So I would hope that the program can come, and I would hope that it would be successful and supported by the people that it needs to be supported by. So while we can say that we support it, I hope that the people that you all really need to make the program successful will support it as well. But I know I could probably speak for us saying that us seeing it ourselves now that we got your back.
Right on.
We got your back, and we want to help support you all with what we need to do.
Thank you, Alderman Clark Hubbard. Right on, Ronnie.
Thank you. So I asked, and we're going to get a PDF that we'll get of that, and we'll get it to all the
We got some
Alderman?
copies over here.
Well, I mean, but if we do it electronically, I can get it to
Oh,
all
okay.
the aldermen.
Okay.
If anybody else wants a copy of it, just let me know. And with that, I'll look for motion to adjourn.
I move that we bring the Safety Committee to a close.
Second.
We have a first and second, then we adjourn.